Hello and welcome back to Is It Really That Good? The show where we watch highly rated movies and tell you if they're as good as everyone thinks they are. Today on Is It Really That Good? Young Frankenstein. This Mel Brooks movie has an 8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is in fact a tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme, Gene Wilder, and a giant freaking monster. A giant freaking monster played by Raymond's dad from Everybody Loves Raymond. Mel Brooks has been a fairly divisive comedian over the years. A lot of people really like his work. He has his detractors. And I have a range of emotions on Mel Brooks' work. I think some of his movies are very, very overrated. Whereas others of them I think are fantastic. So, where did I fall on Young Frankenstein? I've seen it before, but not in some years, so I was trying to come at it again with relatively fresh eyes. And the acting is good. The directing is good. Everything baseline starts out pretty good. You would think so. I mean, to be this highly rated in general, it would have to start baseline pretty good. I think where it gets complicated is in the comedy, because Mel Brooks has this sort of style of absurdist comedy, and that's where I really run into the problems and the good things about the movie. The three problems, really, with absurdist comedy are: one, it's entirely subjective. I know comedy in general is entirely subjective, but absurd comedy in particular, if you don't like the type of absurd they're being, then you're not going to like the movie, you know? Or if you don't like being absurd in general. Some people are just too straight-laced, some people are too buttoned up, some people go, ooh, something absurd happened? My lord, I'll never come to this establishment again. Damn you, Mel Brooks. But so that's the first problem. But that's not a huge problem for me. That's just why not everything might have hit 100%, because, again, everything is hit and miss when it comes to comedy and absurdist comedy. The second problem with absurdist comedy is when it becomes too ironic. Irony is a great thing to use because it's a surprise. People love surprises. People love twist endings. We'll talk about that a lot. Not in this particular movie, but later on. But surprises are only good if you can't predict them. That's why an ironic joke is good. Because you start at the beginning of the joke, you get to the end, and then something that you didn't expect happens. However, over the course of a movie, if you're using irony too much, and it becomes a pattern, then you start to be able to predict what's going to happen. Because if it's ironic, then the opposite of what you expect is going to happen. So you start to know to expect the opposite. And you're not surprised, and it's not as delightful, and it's not as funny. And this movie has some problems like that, where it relies on irony a little too much. It relies a little bit on being like, see, the opposite thing happened here. And you're like, I know, because the opposite thing's been happening for the last hour, and why would I expect anything other than the opposite now? You know, you gotta go back, hit the standards again. And they do that to a certain extent. So that's really the second problem. The second problem is irony, you start to know what to expect, everything like that. And then the third problem really, I guess, could go either way. Either it's too absurdist or not absurdist enough, depending on who you are and what you like. If it's too absurdist, you can't relate to it, you can't connect to it, and you have a hard time finding it funny, you have a hard time staying engaged. That's not the problem I had with this movie. I had the opposite problem. In moments where it's not absurdist enough, it becomes less hilarious and more amusing, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself. It just puts kind of a ceiling on how you feel about it. If you're just watching it and you're just like, oh yeah, okay, it was amusing enough, good enough. So those are really the three problems. The first problem we can't really deal with. Just know that not everything's going to hit for every person. The second problem, I really think, a little too much irony, a little too much like, look at what the left hand's doing. Oh my God, it's the right hand. And then, again, after like an hour of that, you're just like, I see it coming, I've had problems with that in other movies too. Not just comedies. I've had problems with that in plenty of movies. That was one of the things, I'm just going to put this out there as an example. This is an example of what I mean, even though it's a little bit me self-indulgently ragging on something that I hate. In Star Wars Episode 7, there's this whole scene building up at the beginning of the movie where they're on the sand planet that's not Tatooine. I'll do a whole thing in episode 7 later, how much I hate it, but they're at like this junkyard and they're looking for a ship. And there's, I don't know how long it actually is in the movie, but it feels like 15 minutes where they're just like, where's the ship? Where's the ship? What kind of ship are we gonna find? And you're like 2 minutes psychologically into however long this is, and you're like, I wonder if they're gonna find the Millennium Falcon. So then 13 psychological minutes later, when you get there and they're just like, oh my god, it's the Millennium Falcon, you're like, yeah, it was. Should have found it faster. You know, should have made it more surprising. Something like that. So that's more coincidental than irony, but that's the same sort of sails being taken out of, the wind being taken out of the sails that I'm talking about. Where when you start to expect something, you're like, yeah, it happened. I knew it was going to happen. Okay. All right. So, and that can be, depending on how you feel, that can still be good in various forms of media, but it just doesn't work when it's played out so rapidly over such a long period of time. So, but all the performances are good, and the directing, of course, is good. Like I said, I love some of Mel Brooks' work. Maybe I'll do like a Mel Brooks ranking episode at some point or something, because I have a wide spectrum of feelings on his work. Just on his Gene Wilder work. I don't think my least favorite movies of his is his Gene Wilder one, but I feel like, for me, Young Frankenstein is kind of average in his works. And there's a Gene Wilder movie that I feel is below it in quality, and a Gene Wilder movie that I feel is definitely above it in quality. And also other movies that I feel are above and below in quality, but we'll get to that in the whatever Mel Brooks episode happens to happen. But so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. You can kind of see that I feel so average about this movie, but not bad average, good average. It's a good movie, it is. Good performances, good directing, everything. It is funny at some points. I did laugh here or there, and again, part of it's just maybe being desensitized or knowing what to expect or something like that, but if you get the DVD copy, which it says the funniest comedy of all time. It is not the funniest comedy of all time. Is it an 8 out of 10 on IMDb or 93% on Rotten Tomatoes? I don't know that I would rate it that highly. I don't know that it is really that good. It's not much worse than that. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. There's movies out there where people are just like 8 out of 10, and I'm like, really? 8 out of 10? Not even 7 out of 10. Not even 5 out of 10. But this movie is more like 8 out of 10? Really? Kind of more like 7-ish, depending on how you feel. So, that's kind of where I am. Is it really that good? I don't think it's really that good, personally. But again, Mel Brooks stuff, everybody has a different ranking for how they feel about Mel Brooks movies. Some people love Blazing Saddles, some people love Spaceballs, some people love The Producers and History of the World and the whole spectrums and everything. Everybody has a different one. Some people hate The Producers and other things as well. But it's really just kind of about... And that's the weird thing. I kind of feel like this movie largely, as much as a lot of people really like this movie, it does tend to be kind of in the middle of Mel Brooks stuff, where some people are like, I like some of his movies better than it, and others less so. I think even some of the same people who would give this an 8 out of 10 would be like, Blazing Saddles, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, something like that, so I think that's where some people are. So I think that's where it is. I think it's in the middle. I don't really think it's that good, but it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. So, if you want to see me do a Mel Brooks episode where I get further into how I feel about Mel Brooks' entire catalog, feel free to leave a comment in the comments and I'll think